broadcasting to you tonight from here in the studios at WMPR Radio, 100,000 watts of broadcast power. We're also simulcasting at WeBelieveDigital.com's broadcast studio as well. We're being seen on Roku TV in 139 different countries, on Facebook and on YouTube, but more importantly, you can catch us on our own platform, WeBelieveDigital.com. This relationship and this partnership between WMPR and We Believe Digital is one of the rarest opportunities that we've seen in a long time to do great things in controlling the narrative in our communities throughout this entire state. And I look forward to growing this concept and seeing exactly what we can grow up to be. If you look at us on Roku TV, you'll see that We Believe Digital sits right next to Hulu, Netflix, and Showtime. So it's important to have an African-American owned broadcast station that sits in that space. You know, you have to have dreams and you have to have vision in order to make something happen. And you don't know what will happen until you really put the effort in, put the time in, and see who comes to assist you. Now, we know there are a lot of people that are going to come immediately that are going to oppose whatever you're doing. That's to be expected. And you don't have to have 100% of the people to assist you in doing anything. But it's critically important that you have strategic partners. Strategic partners is what really count in this relationship. You know, I have a guest in our studio tonight that I'm going to get to very shortly, and I'm going to ask him just to bear with me for a moment. But I have the Central Mississippi Highway Commissioner in the studio here with me tonight. And he's a gentleman that I've known for a long, long time that has helped me throughout the years and to fight some real serious battles. And it's an honor for him to be here with me. But I'm going to ask him to bear with me just a moment because this is so serious, people. This is so serious. This is my Mississippi. And my Mississippi takes me into a lot of different emotional challenges, from angry to hurt, disappointed to feeling good. It just runs the entire roller coaster of the things that I've seen since I've been in this state and in this world. You know, when I go all the way back to 1800s, and I'll just give you real quick, just go back to 1800s when the Choctaws ruled Mississippi. The Choctaw Nation was headquartered in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. And you never heard of the Great Choctaw Battle. You never heard of Geronimo or Sitting Bull or anybody like that, or no Great War, and yet the Choctaw Nation was defeated. The Choctaw Nation was defeated because it was defeated from the inside. And then one day, out of pure meanness and hatred in this state, Mississippi declared that there would be no Indians in Mississippi at all. You were either going to be black or white, but you were not going to be an Indian. And so they rounded up all of the Choctaw Indians and they marched them out to Oklahoma City in that terrible thing called the Trail of Tears. And those individuals that didn't go hid out in the swamp along the Mississippi Pearl River. But when the declaration was made that you're going to be either black or white, families were split right down the middle. Sisters and brothers were separated because they couldn't tell whether they were black or white. You see, Master had more white babies in Mississippi probably than they had, more black babies than they had anywhere in the world. More mulattoes. If you go into Kosciuszko, Mississippi, I can recall I didn't see a dark-skinned African-American for a long, long time. And so we have a lot of history here that we got to get out on the table at some point in time so that we know what we're up against and where we're coming from and what we got to do to fix the problem. You know, our history is not good. We have to go back in 1950s even when we have the brutal massacre, murder of Emmett Till, the thing that changed this whole world. The brutal killing of Emmett Till changed the entire world when his mother opened that casket and we all saw how he had been mutilated and how mean and hateful people could really be. Right up in Philadelphia, Mississippi, when we had the 3 civil rights murders up there, buried in an open dam. Jews coming down to assist in the civil rights struggle. Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner, buried in Philadelphia. And so what I want to say is that we fought our way through some things, and we get to a point where we began to make progress, and then there was a thing that came along called integration. And for the first time, we lost control of our children, and our children were not tied to the struggle that got them to where they were, so they had no knowledge of it. You know, as a teenage boy in Madison County, Mississippi, I saw my uncle who was driving a school bus. I saw whites open the door and shoot his thumb off his hand and shot one of his eyes out because he attempted to pass a white school bus. Tried to kill him. I saw 2 of my cousins, Gene Brown and Junior Mack, run over on the Natchez Trace Parkway and castrated as a teenage boy right here in Mississippi. And there was never an investigation, and there was never nothing done. This is the brutal history that we come from, African Americans. These are the things that we fought through to get to this point. Now I want to shift to something more positive, because we can't stay in those places. But as the Jews said, never again. Never again can we go back to those places. And we fought our way through this thing. And today, we find that we have African American leadership that we voted for, that we nurtured and we educated and we groomed, and we put our next generation into these jobs as electors. And this African American leadership is the key to our survival. It's that serious. We have no place to go as black folk. We cannot turn or return to white masters and think we're going to improve our conditions. Our only hope lies within our race, within the people that we select and put into these jobs. And as difficult as it may be, I recall Mayor Harvey Johnson said how difficult it was to become the first African-American mayor and try to promote the concept of building a small black business class. Just met with open opposition to that. So we know what you're up against out there, folk, African-American leadership. We know what you're up against, but you gotta fight your way through it the way we fought through it the first time. And you gotta make that happen. And so I'm gonna shift now to my guest, but let me just say this. My guest is in a position that African American has never had before. Controlling a budget, $100 billion or more. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm sure he'll tell us. But he's up against some real difficult times. I saw the report of the dollars that were being spent in the northern district of this state of Mississippi and in the southern district of the state of Mississippi. And the dollars that this state spends in the central district, we don't get a third of the dollars that they're spending. Because the central district comprised of the Mississippi Delta in Jackson, where we have this diaspora, whatever my word is, where the blacks are congregated. And so it's going on now the way it was going on then. But Fred would say at New Horizon, helps in the house. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome to the mic my good friend and a guy that this community is dependent upon and praying for every day that he remains strong and healthy so that he can get this job done. Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you, my friend Socrates Garrett. Socrates and I go way, way, way back. As he indicated, we met each other a long time ago. He and I attended a great university down in the southern part of the state, and you Jacksonian, Mississippi Valley State, and others don't get upset, but we attended Alcorn State University.
Yes, we did.
Together. And we've had a relationship. He is exactly right. I consider Socrates to be one of the greatest ventures, joint ventures. I call him the guru in that category because he has figured the system out and he worked it well. And been a great businessman and contributed a lot to the community. So thank you, Socrates, for all that you've done. And thank you for your support. We have worked together again over the years, and you were very supportive in my effort when I decided in 2019 to put my name on the ballot for the Transportation Commission for the Central District. And because of your support and many, many others, and our Heavenly Father, we was blessed in being successful and elected to the position. And it has been very challenging. It is one that we work hard at. Some folks told me it was going to be a part-time position. I seem to be working overtime. So the part-time part doesn't apply to me because there's a lot to be done. And we have a lot of friends like you and others who support us and help us and give us direction on where to go. You indicated something that's been very dear to me, and we worked hard at it, and that was trying to get our hands around the dollars, because we know that the citizens of the Central District, and in particular here in Hinds County, the Jackson area, and throughout, want to know that they have a commissioner that they supported and put in office that's going to be looking out for the 22 counties in the Central District. And the Central District consists of 22 counties with 1 million citizens in it. We only have 3 million citizens or so, and I represent about 1/3 of those citizens. But when we looked at those numbers that you spoke of between the 3 districts, South and the North and the Central, we look back to about 1990 and came forward, and we realized when we looked at over $3+ billion that has been expended in certain categories in building highways, 4-lane highways and other things throughout the state, that the Central District certainly has not got its fair share. When we looked at the $3.3 billion, the Central District was getting about 500 million, and the other 2 districts was getting over 1.2 billion each. One 1.3 billion, one 1.2. So we realized that there was a problem in that, and we've been trying to correct that and move forward to make some things happen. So I'm here tonight to report to you that we are working hard and we are making some progress in what we're trying to do, and some of the things that we campaign on that we was going to try and make happen by bringing more black businesses into the system and giving them a fair share, spending the money throughout the 22 counties. And so I'm here tonight to give you kind of a report on that and how we are progressing with that, and some of the things that we're going to be trying to do and working with you going forward to make it even better.
Well, it's good to have you here. So, it's good for our citizens out there to understand that your district consists of 22 counties and about 1 million people.
A little over 1 million citizens. I like saying that I represent 1 million citizens.
1 million citizens. And your 22 counties are probably predominantly black.
Well, we include the Delta, which is predominantly black, and then when we go into the eastern part of the county, the district, like Noxubee and Kemple, we have a majority black, but then there are some other counties, like Madison and Rankin County, that's included in the district, and they are not majority black, they're majority white. We get into Newton County and Scott, the same kind of thing. Lauderdale, the county, is majority white. The city of Meridian is majority black. So we have a very diverse district that we serve and work with, and the main purpose and goal have been to make sure that the 22 counties, and not 1 or 2 counties, but all 22 counties, would get their fair share of the dollars that's coming down. I can't sit here in this chair now and not give a shout out to Congressman Benny Thompson, who has been very supportive of the federal legislation that was just passed a week or so ago, and the president signed it into law on Monday. This is going to bring some additional monies in the infrastructure arena to the state of Mississippi. And he and I have been working together and communicating to make sure, once again, that the state of Mississippi understand that we anticipate and expect that equity to be in place as we expend dollars in the state of Mississippi.
Well, I assure you that they won't be there without you. And we have no history of equity. And so, I mean, our chance and our hopes rely on your ability to navigate that. And we're not naive. We know that you represent, you know, a lot of white people, and I know that all of those people had to vote for you in order for an African American to get in this position, and we're grateful for that support that you got. But they understand that it's time for equity and inclusion become part of our everyday discussion.
Oh, no question. When I look at, I'll give you a couple of examples. Down in Claiborne County, which is right here near us, and here in Hinds County, as well as in Adulton. But Claiborne County, I'll start the conversation off with to say that it was part of the 87 HEADS program. That program was put in place in 1987 when they was doing the 87 highway program, and they increased the fuel tax to 18 cents to help pay for it. All of the highways that was identified in the legislation has been completed in 4-lane, except for Port Gibson Highway 61. And I always ask the question, how did you get to near the end and you get to Port Gibson and just decide you're going to walk away from it? Over 30 years that was not done. Then I look up in Greenville, Mississippi, Highway 82. Is another highway that was part of the Vision 21, and that was supposed to be a bypass built around Greenville coming out of Leland and going over to the Mississippi River. We built the Mississippi River Bridge with federal dollars, about $380 million. We built bridges on that highway that was to be constructed. And then 20 years passed that they didn't do anything else after building the bridges. So when I became commissioner, that was a priority of mine to make sure that we happen. So within 6 months after being in office, we had gotten a grant written and received $71 million from the federal government, and then we, the commissioner, added another $73 million. That contract, and I want to talk about some of the opportunities in it later on, but that contract is going to be let to the prime contractor this month to complete that project. Highway 18, Highway 27 here in Hinds County. We have had community hearings. Highway 27 is identified by the experts, the engineers within the Department of Transportation, as being the most unsafe highway in the state of Mississippi. We had public hearings on it and indicated that we should either 4-lane it or add additional lanes because it has no shoulders. It's a curvy highway. And to add to that, we now have 18-wheelers getting off of the Interstate 55 at Crystal Spring and getting onto 27 and going north to Vicksburg. With that and the log trucks and the school buses, it just creates a very dangerous situation, and we have a lot of fatalities. That highway has never been addressed. It's going to cost about $370-some million to do it, but it is now in the Transportation Commissioners as a result of my sitting in this position. We have it as an immediate project to be done, and we have already entered a contract with a couple of engineers to do some of the work, the initial work, and looking at the right-of-way system in order to make that highway successful. We've also moved Highway 18 up into our Commissioner's priority list because that highway was identified as being an evacuation route as a result of the Grand Gulf being in Claiborne County. Nothing was ever done with it. So just a lot of things that have not been done, but we are working towards making it happen.
Well, let me just say, Highway 27, I've known since I was a student at Alcorn that 27 and 18 were the most dangerous roads you could ever get on. And part of the problem with 27 has always been that, you know, folk were trying to get past the scales on 20. And so you take an alternate route coming through there, and it is just curvy with no shoulders, and those log trucks are flying through there. And it's just been really, really dangerous. And because it ran through the African-American community, it went without any attention until you got there. 18 the same way. We traveled at 18 going back from Jackson, Canton to Alcorn State University, 2-lane highway. It was just real dangerous the whole while. So I'm glad to hear that you're able to move those projects forward. Very dangerous.
That Highway 27 and Highway 16, going from Yazoo City over to Neshoba County, Philadelphia. It's another very dangerous highway because there are no shoulders. If you was traveling that highway tonight and had a flat where you needed to change a tire or stop, you'd have to drive up in someone's driveway to try and change the tire, and that puts your life now in danger because you're trespassing and then if someone driveway and they don't know who you are at night, so it's just a problem. So we're looking at that system also, and then when you've added things like Nissan and Amazon coming into the Madison County north area up there, the traffic has increased. So once again, those are major projects, cost a lot of money. There are a lot of folks excited about the money that they see coming down, and I think enlisted for highways has been like $3.3 billion that people are talking about. But I need to say to you that $3.3 billion include the monies we are currently getting from the federal government. On top of that, they have added some dollars. So we'll be getting a little over $1 billion so new dollars in highway money. But it also creates an opportunity for us to apply for grants that we can apply and get, similar to what the city of Jackson, and I worked with them and supported their application, but they just was awarded $20 million for the Mega Evers Drive. So there are going to be other grant opportunities that we're going to work with our cities and counties to make sure that in addition to the money that we have, that we can work with them on and do the highways and bridges, we're going to go after these other dollars. And our president and secretary have indicated two things that they want to happen. They want to make sure that rural communities in America and communities that have not been given in the past inequities addressed and taken care of. Well, the Central District is full of inequities and rural. So
absolutely.
We should be at the top of the list.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about the department. Now, it's not a state agency. Some states control the Department of Transportation, but in Mississippi, it's not a state agency, or is it a state agency?
It is a state agency, but it's structured differently in that we have a commissioner structure where the three commissioners are elected by the people.
They're not appointed by the governor.
They're not appointed by the governor.
Most agency heads are appointed by the governor.
Exactly. We, the commissioners, are elected, and then we hire an executive director. Brad White is currently our executive director, who came over from Governor Reeves' office as chief of staff. So he's the new executive director that we have, and then we have staff. Within that, we have the district, and the district is subdivided into two districts. So I have a district in what I refer to as district number 3 on the west side of the district, which takes up most of the Delta in Copiah County, Jefferson County, and Claiborne County. And it has 12 counties in that particular district. And then District 5 starts in Hinds County and go east, picking up Rankin County, Madison County, Scott, all the way over to Lauderdale, Neshoba, Leake, Madison, those counties. So we have 2 offices. When I was elected, I wanted to make sure that all areas of the district was represented, so we created a second office in the Delta. And that office covers those 12 counties in District 3, and then the other office here in Jackson cover District 5. In addition to that, we have 2 district engineers that work real close with the commissioner and my staff in those offices to make sure that when Socrates Garrett or a mayor or a supervisor or any other person calls and say there's a problem with a highway or a bridge and it needs our attention, that we get on it to try and address it.
So So you're not a state agency. You're elected commissioners that run the highway department.
We are elected commissioners, elected to a state agency and or office. We are part of the executive branch as opposed.
How much money do you receive from the state?
The state, we have about $1.2 billion, and about 51% of that come from the state. Most of our state monies come from the fuel tax. When you go to this tank, you pay 18 cents per gallon, not percentage, 18 cents. So every gallon, regardless of what you're paying, if you was paying 50 cents a gallon, we'll get 18 cents. You pay $3, we get 18 cents. So that's an old system. It's not indexed, or it doesn't multiply like a percentage number would. It just gives us a flat 18 cents. So we've been flat for a.
And how are the cities? What do the cities receive out of the gas tax?
The municipalities and counties, board of supervisors, and the state aid, they receive monies from the tax. I forget what percentage each one of them get, but it takes the amount of money we get down to about 77% of what's collected.
So it comes out of that 18 cents y'all get?
Yes.
So I think it was 7% or something like that, or 7 cents or something like that every gallon.
The counties get so much, the cities get so much, state aid, and then we give monies to various organizations like the group that control beavers, beaver control. We give money. We got an organization.
Now, beaver control. Now, beavers, it was my understanding that y'all brought, and y'all, everybody is in y'all, brought the alligator up to the Mississippi Reservoir to control the beaver. That's how the alligators got up here.
I'm not familiar with that one. You're a historian. More,
okay, well, they got tired of the beavers building all these dams and clogging up all these streams, and so.
Well, they still out there. They still collecting part of that fuel tax that's collected.
It's for beaver control.
Yeah, there's a thing down on the Gulf Coast called the seawall, and part of the money that's collected at the fuel tank goes to the seawall. So about $30 million a year or so comes out of those dollars that's collected that goes to various different entities. So all of the money that's collected, when you buy a gallon of gas, you may think that you just contributed everything that you paid in the way of the 18 cents towards building a mile of highway and or a bridge, but that's not the case.
Okay.
In addition to that, you've been paying the same 18 cents since 1989. The bill was passed in 87. Everything went into effect around 1989. So we haven't seen an increase since 1989 of dollars coming from that category. As a matter of fact, the only money to include all of this federal money that you have seen coming down from Washington, D.C. Up to this point, MDOT is the only agency in the state of Mississippi that has not received any money. And the reason that I can say we haven't received any money is that last year, Congress around December, when they did that final push for money to come down to the counties and the state and the municipalities, they put in there $118 million for the Department of Transportation Infrastructure. Well, the legislature, in its wisdom, decided that they weren't going to allow that money to come to us, and they hijacked the $118 million and earmarked it. So we haven't had an increase.
How can the legislature hijack money that's allocated for the Department of Transportation? I mean,
the process in which the way the money flows from Washington, the Federal Transportation Administration puts the money into a formula. Congress puts it into a formula, and the money is sent to the Federal Department of Transportation, and then they send the money down in that formula to the state. However, when it gets to the state, the legislature in Mississippi has the responsibility of taking the money and appropriating it to the Department of Transportation. Up until this past session, what the legislature has done is that when they receive the money, they send it to we, the commissioners, and then we, the commissioners, decide kind of how we're going to spend those dollars. The legislature decided to changed that this past session and hijacked it.
Wow. So all of the municipalities, I mean, we got such poor cities like, in the Delta and in Jackson and in black parts of this country. But all of the municipalities get the same amount of money from the sale of gasoline. I mean, Madison and Jackson are on equal footing.
No, it's distributed based upon a formula including population and all. Let me just kind of share with you some numbers. Give you an example of how Mississippi is faring right now. Mississippi's in really good shape. If there was ever a time that a businessman like yourself and a community like the city of Jackson and the county and many, many others, if you have some program needs that the state should be financing, you should be talking to your legislators and talking to your leadership. And the reason being is that for the first time ever, and I served in the Senate for 26 years, Mississippi is financially in good shape. The reason that I can say that is that for the fiscal year 2021, which ended June 30th of this year, the legislature funded the state budget, and after they funded the state budget, the budget is put in and made up on estimated revenue that's going to be collected from your various taxes, corporate tax, personal income, as well as sales tax and casino tax and all the others. After they put that budget together, $1.04 billion with a B dollars came in over and above what they had estimated. Okay, that was
over and above.
That was last year.
Okay,
at the end of June 30th. The new fiscal year that started July 1st, I looked at it the other day, and from July 1st through October 31st, they had put together the budget, and in the rainy day fund, this is the fund they call the working cash stabilization. In that rainy day fund, they had $541 million over and above the budget that had been approved funding our agency. But this fiscal year, for those 4 months, over and above what they put in the budget, they have collected, the state has collected $314 million.
314 what?
Million.
Okay.
Over and above. So you had last fiscal year $1.04 billion, this year $314 million over and above. In addition to that $541 million in the rainy day fund, the state has $1.8 billion that came from the federal government in the American Recovery Plan that the legislature and the governor have not decided how they're going to expend it at this particular point. So you look at the estimates over and above. Last fiscal year, over $1 billion, $314 million. This year, $541 million in rainy day fund, $1.8 billion. On top of that, Socrates, the counties combined from the federal government and the Recovery Act brought into Mississippi $578 million. The municipalities, $101 million. Other local entities, about $268 million. And the public education system throughout the state, $1.6 billion. On top of that, every citizen. So you begin now, everybody's beginning to say, well, we need to jump on the counties and the cities and the state and all. Well, you need to be asking the question. But this is what happens for individuals. Individuals, about 2.7 million citizens in the state of Mississippi receive $2,000 each from the federal government. Now, when you multiply 2,000 down 2.7 million, it comes to about $5.4 billion that individually we had that we spent in various places.
So that's money that we didn't have before.
Money that we didn't have before. Now, so when you look at what the individuals had, when you look at what all the government entities had or have, you begin to see billions of dollars flowing through our hands as individuals and government entities, wherever we may be, whether we be at the state level where I am. Now, I talked about all those individuals. Now, I told you also earlier that we are the only agency that has not received any money. But coming forward, we're going to receive additional money. And this is what's going to happen as a result of what the president signed into law the other day. Mississippi will get about $3.3 billion. Now, all of that's not new money. Part of it's money we've been getting, okay? But we're going to get an additional 1 point something to $2 billion, okay? $225 million will be for bridges. That $3.3 billion will be for highways that we, the commissioners, hopefully will be allocating it to. $223 million for public transportation. Like our system here in the city of Jackson, our public transit system out in rural Mississippi. And then there will be another $425 million for water infrastructure. Money is here. How we utilize it is what's going to be important, whether we're talking about highways and bridges, streets, the water system, whatever we have, okay? And I think it's very important that we not point fingers, so to speak, but we take our fingers and invite each other and each group into the room where we can talk about how does Willis Simmons, Commissioner of Transportation, collaborate with the counties and municipalities and these other entities to make sure that our infrastructure system is taken care of. Because guess what? You can build the best hospital with the best doctors. You can have the best schools with the best teachers. You can have the best business, but if you don't have an infrastructure system, a highway or street or a road that you can get them to, get the citizen to, that hospital become useless, that school become useless, that business become useless. The infrastructure system is the driving force that make it all come together and connect it so that if you have a need for an ambulance or fire engine or whatever, you have the infrastructure in place to get you and or the patient where they need to go as fast as possible with a good highway system for the business community and the citizen.
So we got more money than we ever had before. Than we ever had before. There's more money moving through Mississippi today than we've ever seen before.
I listened to Governor Reeves the other day. He was giving his budget, and he talked about spending $1 billion. And when he finished outlining what he was going to do with his $1 billion, there still was about $800 million left out of the because it's $1.8 billion in the American Recovery Plan. And he had not even made a big dent in any overestimates that is occurring.
Let me ask you a tough question.
Sure.
How do we, if we're in a land of plenty at the moment, how do we get those dollars down into the cities like Jackson that's currently at a 40% poverty rate in those cities? How do we help our folk that are struggling so mightily today?
We have allowed our infrastructure system to get in such bad shape with all of the dollars that I talked about, it still won't fix it. We still got to have more money. It's like, for instance, I talked about all the money that's coming to us as commissioner and or the Department of Transportation for infrastructure. But even with that, I mentioned the fact that we haven't raised any money from the state since 1989. Currently, our budget is about 51% state, 49% feds. If we get additional money from the federal and we don't do anything, it's going to flip and it's going to be up 54, 55 perhaps from the Fed, and the state is doing 46. That's unfortunate. We need to understand that we got to pay our staff, okay? And when we pay our staff in the Department of Transportation, we don't get general fund money. We pull it out of the hide that we have, the monies that we are collecting at the pump. We also have inflation, as you well know as a businessman, and when you go to the store, everything is costing you almost twice what it was costing you 2 years ago. Well, we're talking about 30 years ago. So it's costing us 4 or 5 times what it was costing us when we created this revenue stream. In addition to that, we have mudslides and other conditions that's being created. And then when the money comes to the state, the federal dollars, we have to match it at about 20%. So we have a need for new monies. So you can't let anyone say that we need to not put any additional dollars in the system from the state because of feds. That won't work. Nor can you use many of these dollars that just talked about. That would be one-time money. Because when we start talking about match and we start talking about salaries, we talking about inflation and other costs, they are recurring monies that we have to have every year. So we really need to put about $300 million from the state on top of everything that I've spoken of. Now, you mentioned how do we get monies down, and as I indicated, regardless of how much we have talked about here tonight, it's not enough to take care of even the local government. When you look at the city of Jackson, you're talking about billions of dollars when you start talking about infrastructure, because infrastructure is more than just the pavement or concrete you see. When you start talking about infrastructure, you got to go beneath the ground and deal with the pipes and the waters and all that stuff. So you're dealing with two parts of your infrastructure. Water and sewage, you're dealing with the highway also. Both are very costly. Very, very costly. So it's going to take a lot of money to make that happen. And in addition to that, they are both very inconvenient. Because where it used to take you 10 minutes to get to your job or where you was going, you now got to drive around another street or highway, and it may take you 20 minutes. So you're mad. But again, that's what you...
And especially if you encounter a pothole in route as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the inconvenience you have to go through. Now, the best way that Commissioner Willis-Simmons thinks that we get the most bang for our buck and get it down to what you're speaking of is that we all need to be sitting down together. We the supervisors, we the commissioner, we the mayor, we other elected officials, and we need to be talking about how we can partner and how we can make it work. But in addition, we go back because the transportation department is not the only agency and or entity that have had the inequities that I have spoken of earlier. Those inequities exist all over the place. So we have to talk about how do we grow businesses and get them ready. Because if you are a small business person and you have not been successful in getting contracts in the past, you're a little bit shy of going out and investing in your business and growing it and buying equipment in hopes that you would get something that you haven't gotten in the past. So when I and or the mayor or supervisor saying, okay, come on into the room is bigger and you want to participate, it's still a risk. It's still a gamble, so to speak. So to expect you to be ready for that and compete with someone that's been doing it all along, when we're looking at your equipment, your experience, past experience, you won't cut the mustard. But if we can pull a program in place where we can get you to venture and get you to be a part of a system where you can work with and learn both the job and how to do that, how to bid the contract, how to make sure you do the paperwork, the back office kind of stuff that we're speaking of. We, the commissioner, we the mayor, we the board of aldermen, we the board of supervisors, we the presidents, and we the superintendents of education, we all ought to be sitting down and talking about how do we create that kind of a program where we're going to have individuals who can help with the back office of businesses. Now, they're also going to take our business community to kind of looking at things a little bit different and having a trust factor, because I don't want anybody looking in my books. I didn't pay my taxes last year. A lot of other things I haven't done, so I don't want you looking in my books and telling me how to do things. But if we're going to get you ready and get the back office ready, there has to be some trust and technical assistance being put in place. And I think if the president of our universities and community colleges and our superintendents and our commissioners of transportation and our supervisors and our mayors would all get together and formulate a game plan, then we can create businesses that can help us bring in those kind of training programs and services to make it work for everybody, so that because the federal government is going to come down and take a look at how we spent the money. we got to make sure we spend the money properly, because we have to have our back offices have to be up and running. And
so let me ask you: have that kind of convening been done between those principles that you just named ever before in history?
Not to my knowledge, but if it hadn't, it's very much needed, and it's something that we today, with all of these resources that I just mentioned, we ought to figure out how to collectively and jointly come together and put some resources in a pool where that can happen. There, Jackson State University has a great business school, Alcorn, and Mississippi State, and IHL, and a whole lot of different groups. Socrates Garrett, a venture guy who has been, so you guys can come together and put together a system. Now, Jackson State may look at you a little bit funny at some point because you went to Alcorn. Now, that's just a joke. But Jackson State might look at you in their business school and say, because we have the doctors and everybody, we know the system. But when you start working and massaging the kind of program that I'm speaking of that need to be done, they need some business folks like yourself who have had the experience and who know what it means when you get a contract and you uncompensated for your work for 2 or 3 months, and you don't have the ability to make the payroll, and you don't have the ability to pay the note on the equipment that you bought. You're at risk of going under.
Oh, absolutely.
And if your Heavenly Father and or some individual in your family or a friend is not able to come to your rescue, Socrates, you can drown real fast.
And be very profitable as you drown. Yes. And that's something that business people have to understand, that cash is king. Cash flow is king, absolute king. And so, too much business is worse than not enough business. Because, not enough business, you're not investing in a whole lot of things, but too much business, then that's a whole new world. Let me ask you this. We're getting late in our program, so tell me a little bit more about minority participation at MDOT, how it's structured and how you guys look at it, and how African American firms are indexed over at MDOT.
We're looking good, and I want to thank you for serving as part of my transition team.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
You were part of that, and a lot of other good folks, and you raised some good questions. Because I remember very plainly one of the questions that you raised was, why is it you don't have more minorities? And the response was being given, and you say, well, it's because you don't know and you don't network. You say, if you hired and had me in the position, I could bring you folks that I know.
I'd fill the room up with minorities. Yeah.
I remember you making that statement, and that kind of went over with all of the staff that was in there, and I thought it was very profound that you came up with that kind of a statement. But we have made some progress since my being in the position, and you all giving us that great portfolio that you gave us as a result of being on that transition team. One of the things that we have in place that we never had before is that the director now of human resources is a black guy, very sharp, and he's working the system. He and the civil rights division, Ms. Calvin Bell, they're working together along with others.
So you have a civil rights division inside of the Department
of Transportation. One of the few agencies that have.
I've never heard of that before.
Okay. So we have that, and they are working collectively and putting together a mentor protege program that should be rolled out in January. Okay. In addition to that, we have had some training where we had 13 DBEs, black businesses, to come in and train, and we're working with them to get more contracts. For the first time now, we are putting a DBE goal in our professional services contracts. Never been done before.
Wow. And
we have that. For instance, the contract up in Greenville, the bypass that I spoke of, we have a 10% goal for professional services at a minimum. We're going to have a 10% at a minimum goal for the procurement contract, which in the past has been around 3%. So we are making progress.
And I want our listening audience to know, what's your total budget over there?
Our total budget is $1.2 billion this year.
And so if the budget, and I know the budget is salaries and wages and not all for contracts for goods and services, but let's just say 10% of an agency that size could make a real difference in improving the quality of life. It is major.
10% doesn't sound a lot when you compare with $1 billion, but 10% for someone who in the past, you talk about $1 million when they've only had about $100,000 contract, that's a big difference.
Big deal. Caller, you're on the line.
Good evening, Mr. Garrett and Mr. Simmons. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Well, I have a question for both of you all. First of all, Mr. Simmons, I understand they got $20 million to do Medicare, but will your department have anything to do with oversee that? And also, let me ask Mr. Garrett a question really quick. Mr. Garrett, all this work that's in the process of being done, are you able to get in on any of this paving and all this kind of stuff?
Yes, we can. And let me just give you an example. If you've driven Highway 49 within the past month or so, Highway 49 was scheduled to be repaved 2024 or 5. We moved that project up, and we did it with some lottery money. Mr. Robert Kelly, who graduated from Jackson State, from Jackson, he had a nice contract in that. We had other individual truckers who worked with APAC, the contractor who had the project. So that's your question. Yes, sir. We have Mr. Guyton, who is with Mississippi Paving, and he has gotten several contracts as a result of us putting dollars, the lottery monies into it. This contract up in Greenville is going to require 2.7 million cubic yards of dirt to be moved.
Wow.
And we have a 10% DBE goal in that, which means that whoever the contractor is that we're going to announce later on this month will have to utilize 10% expend 10% of their monies that's on that contract with minority contracts. So a lot of individuals with trucks can move dirt. The contractor is going to be looking initially for individuals who are certified with the Department of Transportation as a DBE. However, the way around that is, let's just say Socrates Garrett has a trucking company and he works with the contractor and he gets a contract. If he has 20 trucks that he's going to put on that job, he can contract with you who may have 2 trucks, and he can contract with another 10 folks who have 2 trucks and match his 20 trucks. So he can go in with a total of 40 trucks utilizing 10 other individuals who may not be certified with the Department of Transportation, but they come in under his umbrella. There again allows and creates an opportunity to venture and the trust factor to come in and work with Socrates Garrett as that trucking industry to help move that dirt. But in addition to moving the dirt, you have to move sand, you have to move gravel, and they're going to have to move asphalt, because that job is going to include asphalt and concrete.
Yeah, Carla, you know, that makes a big difference, that 10% goal over there that he's talking about. That will make a big difference in the African American community. As far as Garrett Enterprises is concerned, you know, we're still having difficulty in our community. As a contractor, you know, we have to bid on our work, and what we got to get our municipalities and supervisors and our economic engines to understand is that you got to package things differently. Smaller packages, smaller bids that minority firms can compete on. And you got to be intentional about that. We still see too much work going to Hemp Hill Construction Company, Delta, and utility contractors. And actually, I don't think they're even bidding the work. I think they've negotiated some labor rates, and they are just being awarded contracts. But we're going to fight our way through it, and thank you for the call.
Okay.
Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead. Caller, you're on the air.
Just mash it down and hold it.
Caller, you on it? Yeah, I can hear you.
Put it back on hold. Ask it again. Let it go.
Yeah, I can hear your caller. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to ask the commissioner about the highways and the work that's planned to be done, like 61 that goes through Port Gibson. Has a decision been made to go ahead and complete that? Because there had some, disagreements earlier this year about that.
Yes, sir. We have made a decision to move that project. It's going to take some time because for us to get it, but the decision's been made to do it. That project is going to cost about $160 million, and we have committed to doing that project. Right now, the plan is to take it east of Port Gibson, between the Natchez Trace and the city of Port Gibson.
Okay, I see where they've been doing some work on the trace out there as we speak today, and they started earlier in that direction, and then something came up, and then they come back down and said it's going to be going closer to town, but I'm getting it straight from you now.
Yes,
Thanks a lot, here.
We are working on that, and our engineers are working on it and doing the kind of things that have to be done before you actually do the final design and the awarding of the contract. But we are on it.
Thank you, caller.
Something that should have been done 30 years ago. Thanks a lot.
Exactly
Okay.
right.
Good luck.
All righty. One of the things that we're going to have to do, we're going to have to educate. Education is key for a lot of things, but it's particularly important when we're talking about economic development and how you move the needle in economics. That's something that's not taught very well in our school systems, etc. So we're going to have to educate our citizenry on what their role is in turning the dollars over in the African American community more than one time. Now, the commissioner mentioned the fact that every Mississippian got $2,000, and if we got 2.7 million citizens, then that's a lot of money. And
We have 3 million citizens, but 2.7 million received in 2000.
2 points.
Comes to about $5 billion.
$5 billion.
Our community should have seen a boost in dollars turning over in the community and businesses.
And what we got to do is we got to make this thing show evidence. And so I need to be able to see the impact of those dollars as are in our community. And the only way we're going to see that is that they got to stay in our community. We can't let those dollars come in and go right back out and we remain in the same place. We need to see new trucks running. We need to see new buildings. We need to see things happening in the African American community. So hold on 1 second. Do we have a call? We got 1 minute left in the show. So, Commissioner, I'm going to let you say to the folk that hired you, whatever it is you want to say to them and close us out.
Well, I have to start that by saying thank you again for hiring me, and hopefully we are accessible to you and that you will reach out to us and let us know what your concerns are. Do look at that project up in Greenville and look at all the other projects that we're doing and see if you can't take advantage of it. My office number here in Jackson is 601-359-7035. If you are a small business and you're trying to get certified, do business, give us a call at that number and our system will help you work through that. The last thing I would say, Socrates asked me about black and moving forward. We have a black engineer now over the 3rd District Office, Mr. Earl Glenn, and he's open to meeting with small businesses to talk about how you do business with us.
It's been good. See you next week. Good night.